Hello, friends. Good day, and it's beautiful to have you here today. We want to quickly talk about quinolones, which is a class of antibiotics. And in this class of antibiotics, if you have a fluorine atom as part of the makeup of the atoms present in this antibiotic, we then refer to them as fluoroquinolones. Now, this is a class of antibiotics that are broad spectrum antibiotics, meaning that they're active against quite a large range of microorganisms, and you have different antibiotics are present within this class. They're actually in generations: first generation, second generation, third generation. In the first generation, you have your nalidixic acid, you have clinoxazine. You now have in your second generation, you have your ciprofloxacin and your ofloxacin. The third generation has levofloxacin and sparfloxacin. So you also have a fourth generation that has minofloxacin and gemnoflaxin. Now, what's the mechanism of action of fluoroquinolones? Fluoroquinolones are antibiotics that are able to inhibit DNA synthesis. Antibiotics work in quite a number of ways, and one of such ways is the inhibition of DNA synthesis. Now, for an organism to be able to divide and replicate efficiently, it needs to be able to synthesize new DNA from pre-existing DNA. Now, for the organism to synthesize new DNA, it needs to go through a process of DNA replication. Now, in the process of DNA replication, there are quite a number of enzymes that mediate this process. You have DNA gyrase, you have topoisomerase, you have DNA helicase, so many enzymes like that. Now, the quinolones have the function of they are able to inhibit this synthesis, and they do this by binding and making it impossible or difficult for these enzymes to function. They bind to these enzymes and make the enzymes unable to function, and when these enzymes are unable to function, the process gets shut down. So that is how you now have a situation where the organisms are unable to replicate their DNA, and if they cannot replicate their DNA, then they can't multiply, and if they can't multiply, once their cell cycle is up, they become too old, they can't replicate, and then they die. So this is the process through which these quinolones are able, fluoroquinolones as you might call them, are able to inhibit the function of many of these microorganisms. And this is really, really important because they prevent DNA transcription, translation. They prevent this process of DNA replication, and becomes difficult or impossible for the organism to replicate. Now, a lot of microorganisms that these quinolones are effective against are majorly gram-negative organisms like our E. coli, Salmonella, our Shigella, and our Pseudomonas. They are quite effective against this range of microorganisms. They are also effective against a little bit of some kind of gram-positive organisms, especially the Staphylococcus and the Streptococcus pneumoniae. So they are effective against some of these organisms. They can be used for urinary tract infection, can be used in many other types of illnesses and infections, and it's important to note this. Thank you for listening to this, and have a wonderful day.